All right. So today we're going to talk about the art of the interview. So for your first major podcast, and really the only big podcast that you're doing for this course, you are going to have to interview someone. So we want to make sure that you are set. So you will do the APP. So it's just like a preparation interview where you're only going to have to interview someone for a short amount of time, but you're still going to want to apply the skills that we talk about in this lecture to that interview as well. All right, so interviewing experience shows. The biggest thing is really the more you do this, the more you practice the skill, the better you're going to get at it, which is why we're going to do the APP. So you can have a little bit of a practice with another person to make sure that when you get into your original podcast, you've got that practice already. You kind of have an idea of how it's going to go and what it's going to be like. Really the biggest thing to remember is it's a conversation. So I don't expect it to be some big formal situation. It's going to be a conversation, but being that this is a school project, I do want to stress cursing is not allowed. It's really not acceptable for a school project. So I do want to make sure that we're aware of that, but it's a conversation. So you want to keep it as casual as possible. A really good thing is to pick a topic that you're passionate about. Maybe you are really big into South Carolina football. So you could have a conversation with someone discussing the last game and the game that's coming up. Maybe you're really passionate about an organization and you want to talk to someone who works within the organization. Maybe it's something you work at and you can talk about your job and what it's like working in that environment. But the biggest thing is you're having a conversation with another person and you are leading the conversation. So you want to remember, you are not the person being interviewed. You are interviewing someone and you're leading that conversation. So you want to be curious, connecting with your guest, asking them questions. Really, that's the whole point of the interview, is asking questions, but don't be afraid to ask them maybe something off the wall, like what is your favorite color? Just like something just to kind of get the conversation going before you really jump into like the in-depth stuff. So researching, honestly, that's going to help you out a lot if you do some research. So let's just say you are going to interview your friend about South Carolina football. Maybe you want to do a little interview on the new coach. So Coach Beamer, who is he? Where did he come from? What is he bringing? What skills is he bringing? Maybe you're going to talk about a specific player on the team. So there's lots of different options. But by doing that research and kind of pre-planning your questions, it's going to allow you to go into this with more confidence. But when you are asking those questions, you also want to make sure you don't want to sound like a robot. So you don't want to, for new host in particular, you sound like a robot. So you want to make sure it's like super casual when you are talking to your interviewee. Coach your guest. So tell a story. Maybe you can give them a little bit of advice beforehand. It honestly doesn't hurt. So in the real journalism setting, you would never want to necessarily give your interviewee the questions, but in this situation, it probably doesn't hurt to kind of give them a heads up of, hey, this is what we're going to talk about, but you don't want to give them the exact questions, because then what happens is they will come with their own script for your podcast, and you don't want them to sound super scripted either. Again, it's a conversation that you kind of want to have. Also, my suggestion is have more questions than you might realistically ask, and then kind of just highlight the ones that you think are going to be the most important that for you to keep. That way, if they're just giving really short answers, you can pull out these additional questions to make sure that you're hitting that time limit, that 10-minute time frame. So breaking the ice before the interview. So before you even start the conversation, have a little small talk just to kind of get them warmed up and get them more comfortable with talking to you. Honestly, this could take 2-3 minutes. When I worked in radio, this was something I did before we were going to interview someone. We just kind of chatted as I was setting up, just, hey, how's your day going? Something as simple as that. It sounds cheesy, but it really does. It starts to get the person a little bit more comfortable with that conversation concept. So it's going to make it a lot easier for you. Listening. That's going to be really big. Listen to what they say. A lot of the times, especially when I worked in radio, the person I was interviewing would say something and it would spur an idea. And I would ask a question completely off from what I had on my list. There might be something they say that you're like, oh, that's really interesting. How did you get into that? It's totally okay to kind of go off script. Again, it's a conversation. When you're having a conversation with your friend, they typically say something that spurs questions for you. Open-ended. So this is really important. You don't want to ask them a bunch of questions that have yes or no answers. If you're only asking yes or no questions, that is just going to be you having a whole conversation with yourself where someone just randomly says yes or no. So you really want to avoid any of those yes or no questions. You want to keep them open-ended so that they have to kind of tell a story and, you could dig a little bit deeper into what it is. So thinking outside of the box, you can ask fun or unexpected questions. Maybe I'm going to go back to the Carolina football just because that is something that I tend to hear a lot of those podcasts. So maybe you ask the person they're talking about all these games. Maybe you ask them, what is the first game you remember ever watching? Who were they playing? What drew you into it? Something like that. It's outside of the box. And it honestly, normally it kind of catches your interviewee off guard. And then let me think about it. And then they kind of start to talk about why they got so into Carolina football. All right. So conversation turners. So maybe if they're rambling on, if they've been talking about one topic, one question, and they're on like minute and a half, and this is only a 10-minute podcast, it's okay to be like, well, let's talk about, and then move on to the next question. Sometimes this happens. People will ramble on and you just kind of gotta push that conversation along. So that's totally fine. So how do you end the interview? So at some point you're going to realize, all right, time, we're getting there. Now we got to move this on. It's time to end it so I can do my 1-minute conclusion. How am I going to do that? Really simple. Just, hey, I really want to thank you. I'm really excited that you came out today. And I really appreciate having this conversation. Things like that. That way you're letting them know that the interview is over, but you can also now move it along. The worst thing you can do is you ask your last question, they finish talking, and then you jump right into that conclusion. You don't want to just hop into that conclusion. And it's always important that you thank them. So you want to thank them on your, hey, I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much. And then honestly, at the end, when you are done, you've stopped the recording, thank them again. It makes people feel good. And if you decide to continue doing podcasting, or you ever have to do an interview with them for another course, this is going to give you that opening that they'd be like, you know what, that student was really polite. I would definitely like to do another interview with them. So those are the biggest things for the art of the interview. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm really looking forward to see what you guys can produce, and have a great day.